In this video, we're going to be looking at several things around Fallout 76, kind of a roundup of all of the recent news. The game just got one of its new DLCs today, so I will touch on that. It's one of the more minor ones, but still is a pretty interesting and cool addition, and it has, I think, pretty big implications for the endgame of Fallout 76. But even further, a pretty big issue has arisen with more recent duping exploits that have been discovered. We also got some news around the next DLC coming to this game. So first and foremost, let's actually touch on the new and latest duping exploit. Fallout 76 has had a lot of issues with duping over its history, but fortunately, as of late, things have been pretty quiet. You could tell in early 2019 as duping was one of the big issues facing this game, Bethesda made a considerable effort to remove that and prevent it as much as possible. And for the most part, that worked. We saw ban waves, we saw certain item deletions if it was in a stack, and we also saw new features making it harder to actually enable further duping. Although this definitely did come a bit too late. Towards the end of 2018, there was a lot of duping exploits, and it was just kind of rampant. As a result of that, a lot of people were duping what was top tier items at the time and trading them. Many of those traded items still exist in the game right now. That's why you see so many high level players having god tier weapons, even though the likelihood of them finding them naturally is really low. Although, fortunately since then, the game has started to recover. With subsequent patches and balance changes, the meta has shifted. We saw events like the Fosnot Parade that did produce very rare mass, and since there hasn't been too many widespread duping issues over the past few months, those were genuinely rare. Up until patch 9 for Fallout 76, which did a couple of things. It seems one, it actually did reintroduce a duping glitch around the White Springs bunker. This was an old duping method that seemingly was somehow broken again or re-enabled. I'm not entirely sure how that happened, but huge credit to Bethesda. Very quickly, they did post a hotfix. They took the servers down, seemed to have resolved that issue, and now you can no longer do that. But conversely, also almost immediately following patch 9, other people told me about a separate duping glitch. This is far more hit or miss. It only works some of the times, and it's not a guaranteed, at least based off my understanding. And as of right now, it seems like that has yet to be patched out. It seems like some of the most widely duped items at this point are some of those extremely rare Fosnot masks, but even further, some of the very meta armors or weapons that are particularly good right now. And finally, an interesting one you might not be too familiar with, legacy legendary weapons. There are several legendary effects that were actually removed from this, like you can't get explosive flamers anymore. So that was another popularly duped item, but now you have a couple of issues as a result of this. There haven't been any player bans for people abusing this exploit as of yet, although that could potentially be on the way. But even further, as long as there's no way to actually track and remove these items as they're shared, even just a day or two of this dupe glitch being live will mean that some of those extremely rare items will get kind of mass produced and sold, and this certainly can harm the in-game economy. Let's say there was only 1,000 Fosnot masks, but now there's 3,000 as a result of the dupe glitch. Those are totally made up numbers, but you could see how that could be a pretty big issue. Even further, I've seen a lot of people really hesitant to now trade for some of these rare items. They don't want to buy any of those rare masks because they don't know if it was a duped one or a legitimate one. And to be frank, I'm not totally sure what the solution is. It's my understanding that Bethesda doesn't have a way to actually detect whether an item was duped or not, so it's not like they could just wipe out all of the duped items. Now, I might be wrong with that. Obviously, we are kind of outsiders here, so we only have limited knowledge, but I'm curious to see, A, when we actually see the secondary dupe glitch get resolved. There is a patch planned for this Tuesday, so hopefully then, but also what kind of further actions they'll take based off what's already happened. It also is worth mentioning that a ton of people that had apparently duped in the past were suspended and still haven't been unbanned or unsuspended. And you'd be like, well, why would dupers get unbanned? Well, in the original ban emails that they received, it said it was only a limited time. Although now several months have passed and we haven't heard anything around this. Seemingly, there still is at some point an update coming that will unban all of these users. There was actually one that did unban them all, but apparently that was an accident and they all got rebanned a couple of days later. I know several of you guys have been messaging me about this one and I don't have any answers for you. But outside of that, today in game, we also did receive the latest DLC for Fallout 76, that being with the legendary vendor, otherwise known as the Purveyor. This is basically a new legendary slot machine. Last week, we gained the ability to scrap legendary items for legendary script, and now we have the ability to spend that legendary script. The way this works is once at the legendary vendor, which is now in Berkeley Springs, it has its own custom train station, as well as there was actually a map marker added for this train station. But once talking to her, you could select whether you want an armor, a melee weapon, or a ranged weapon, and how many legendary effects you want your item to have, either 1, 2, or 3. And of course, depending on what you pick, there are different prices associated with it. And then after selecting one of those, you'll just get a random item. If you get a bad one, you can scrap it again for legendary script, although of course you will get less script than what it costs to buy it. And all around, I would say this is an awesome addition to Fallout 76's endgame, and I actually think it's a really healthy addition to the endgame in kind of an unusual way. Right now, the endgame is kind of just farming rare items, most of which are legendaries. In effect, this is a brand new gambling system added into that, a way to take a bunch of useless legendaries, scrap them into currency, and gamble that away to hopefully get an even better legendary. There's really no downside. In the past, all people did was just delete or throw out those unwanted legendaries. Now you actually can transition them into something usable, potentially. Something pretty interesting that you might encounter in game, only one person can actually use the vendor on a server at any given time. So like when I walked up to it, I found a line of people and you had to jump online and wait for everyone to be done. Although surprisingly, there was no cutting or anything sketchy like that, continuing to showcase just how nice and kind the Fallout 76 in-game community is. Although one thing surprisingly absent from the legendary vendor is the mystery pick. Last week we saw a preview of this during that week's Inside the Vault article, but as we get it in game, there's one pretty notable difference. Again, that mystery pick. This was seemingly going to be a way to actually just get a random 3-star legendary of some kind that we don't know. We don't know what item it would be, but it seems like Bethesda might have cut this. There's actually a post talking about how good of a pick that was on a consistent basis, so that might have been one of the contributors to it. But if you're really looking forward to that one, I'm sorry, but you will be disappointed. And one other thing that is pretty important to note, there are some caps on how many script you can get. You're only able to actually trade in items for 150 script per day, and that will reset each day. But even further, your account can only hold a maximum of 1,000 script at any given time. So there are certainly limits as to how often you could use the legendary vendor. Outside of that though, we also did get this week's Inside the Vault article, this actually talking about the next Fallout 76 DLC, and actually the last one, it seems, that with Project Paradise, otherwise known as the Arcos Pharma dungeon. I talked about this quite extensively through some of the various data mining or leaks we have heard, but officially from Bethesda, we haven't heard a bunch until now. We hear about Project Paradise. This is launching on Tuesday, May 21st, aka this next Tuesday. In effect, it's going to take place under Arcos Pharma, as we did suspect. There's going to be 3 separate biomes in this new underground location. As a result of this, there was a diligent team here working on exploring some of the different interactions between flora and fauna and how they grew in these biomes. Naturally, all the humans are gone now, so it is ran by a set of robots that still are down there. This is going to be a new event in-game, the event actually being named Project Paradise, and in effect there's going to be creatures down there that we're trying to apply certain serums to, doing the research that was originally being done as part of Project Paradise. Some of these will remain passive, other ones after applying the serum will become empowered and attack us. They also mentioned that even though Arcos Pharma is located in the forest region, which is meant to be the lowest level region, that this event will actually have enemies that are over level 50, and all 3 of the biomes that are mentioned will require your attention, meaning that using a group would be beneficial here. And those who successfully complete the event will get a new kind of loot as well as some experience. We know one of the new items being added in is the Stimpack Diffuser. This reportedly is a Stimpack that actually heals your entire squad. It also is required for a challenge that is live right now. A lot of people don't know how to complete it, and you kind of have to wait till this event goes live to complete it. And apparently the Bear Claw weapon is also coming with this. And based off what Bethesda has said in the past, it seems like this is actually going to be a genuinely high level event. They mentioned how the burrows would also be a high level, but just based on the description discrepancies between the burrows and Arcos Pharma or Project Paradise, it seems like one, this is more of a genuine dungeon, something you'll actually want to repeat. But even further, you could tell they've been a lot more tame in describing this. They're definitely trying to not overhype Project Paradise, and I appreciate that. It seems to me that Bethesda genuinely recognized that with the Burrows DLC, they did a little bit too much hyping there, and that led to disappointment from what is otherwise a pretty cool new in-game location. For me at least, I didn't really find the location to be bad on its own right, it was just due to my expectations, I found it disappointing. Outside of this, there's only really 2 other things that might be on the way. During the original roadmap, they mentioned camp decorating would be coming, although we really haven't heard a bunch about that. So the status of that one's pretty unknown, and we know at some undisclosed time after this next update goes live on Tuesday, we also are getting camp display cases, so you could show off bobbleheads or other items. But otherwise, that's pretty much it for the first DLC wave of Fallout 76. Towards the end of this article, they actually mention how in future articles, they'd like to include something new. They will still talk about future content and updates, but they'd like to add a bit more to it. They request user feedback around this, so I will have a link to the forum post where you can suggest things yourself, although they do toss out a few of their working ideas, such as more about the developers behind Fallout 76, as well as additional insight into existing in-game features. I think both of those would be pretty cool. But also, I have a feeling one of the reasons they're doing this is there's going to be a bit of a drought of content over the next couple weeks. We obviously know that there is another DLC wave coming, that with Nuclear Winter. I made a full video talking about how Bethesda is seemingly teasing something around that, although I imagine most of the news around Nuclear Winter will come at this year's E3 conference because, well, that's a really big stage and that's probably when they want to talk about a lot of it. So I'm predicting we're not going to probably hear all that much before E3. Their E3 presentation is on June 9th, so maybe we get a couple of minor teases before then, but I would expect the big reveals to come on June 9th, meaning Inside the Vault might have a kind of lack of content before that. That's all speculation on my part. Either way, I'm really excited to see what they add next. This first DLC wave was definitely a big success for the game. Once we do get the final touches of it, I am going to do a comprehensive review, actually compare it to other DLCs, considering this was a staggered release. But with that, as always again, hopefully you found this video informative. Hopefully you enjoyed, and I hope to see you all next time. Later.